You're listening to the NCF&B podcast. Tell your friends to find us on iTunes at NCF&B podcast and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at NCFB pod. And now, enjoy the show.
Listening to the NCF&B podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss. And today we are on location from the world-famous Poole's Diner in downtown Raleigh, North Carolina. And we also have a world-famous guest. She is the director of wine and special projects for David Chang's Momofuku restaurant group, and also the creator of Bellus wines and Ramona wine cooler, Ms. Jordan Salcito.
It is such an honor to be here. I'm very privileged to get to spend the afternoon with you guys, and I am blown away by North Carolina's food scene already in the few hours that I've
awesome.
Been able to spend some time here.
Yeah, we're off to a good start. You flew into RDU at like 10:30 this morning.
Yeah, easiest flight ever.
Yeah,
from
That's
New York.
A quick little jump. And then where'd you guys go?
Then we had lunch at Standard Foods. Of the likes of John May from the chef of Piedmont was there, Mike Lee, chef of M Sushi.
Oh, wow.
Sydney Nazarian,
over at Stanbury.
Yeah, over at Stanbury.
A who's who of Raleigheites.
It was pretty awesome,
and Durham
and then
too, yeah.
Shelley Godwin of Garland was there.
Shelley actually spent a lot of time here in this very same building at Poole's. Small world. And then at one point, I think I was there for a little bit. Not today.
Were you? Okay,
You did?
Right. You spent some time at the restaurant, I hear.
I worked there
for many months or years?
Many 4 months.
Okay, that's
Yes.
But, many days.
Many days, many hours.
We threw you in
Look at everybody
to Raleigh culture. Yeah,
Everyone wants to crack
I'm
these. Let's
thirsty.
crack 'em.
Yeah, this is the
look at
Ramona
this.
wine cooler.
The Ramona wine cooler. I'm here thanks to Kellogg's Selections. So Jeff and Stephanie are friends from New York, and now I get to work with them here as well, which is fun.
So let's say cheers to that.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers like we're in Sicily
Cheers,
or so.
like we're in Sicily,
So,
exactly.
Jordan, I want to get into the wines in a little bit, but I have a question to jump right in, okay? Mm-hmm. So, Jordan Salcito, we'll talk about you in the third person for a second, just to hype it up. What would I see differently on a day when you actually get to spin class versus a non-spin class day?
Oh my goodness, I'm such a better person on a spin class day.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Is today a spin class day or not? You traveled from New York today.
Yes,
so.
and it's mentally a spin class day because I am going running tomorrow with Jeff, which normally when you're traveling, it's like you just sort of know that you're not going to exercise. And Jeff, in my itinerary yesterday, he sent me this very, very helpful email, and it said, here's what we're going to do, and blah, blah, blah. And by the way, do you want to go running on Thursday?
Yeah, aren't you quoted as saying you're like a dog that needs to be
walked?
Yeah.
I really feel that I am.
What type of dog is your spirit animal?
Oh my goodness, I would say a Vizsla. I would say I'm a Vizsla.
A Vizsla.
Oh, that's cool. Like a guard dog, but very thin and very like agile and strong.
And lots of energy.
Yeah.
I feel like but also very nice. All the Vizslas I know are pretty nice.
I don't know if I know many Vizslas, so.
They're really beautiful.
Yeah.
Henry, my son's godfathers, have a Vizsla named Rudy, and that is how they used to have a Vizsla named Bailey, and then Bailey passed away.
Poor Bailey.
And then they had
those damn dog ears, they'll get you in the end.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. Well, let's start, since you mentioned a little bit about your family. In doing research, imagine that a podcaster does research by listening to podcasts, and that's just what I did because you've done a few of them. From Levy Dalton's I'll Drink to That. You were at Roberta's on Cherry Bomb, and you've done quite a few. And so listening to them, though, and the beauty about podcasts is they don't go away. They're just there, for better or for worse. But I think the first one I listened to went all the way back to 2013 or so. But the one thing I was noticing is, in just kind of listening to you, I was realizing that I could really hear the evolvement of you and your career. Whereas on one of the first shows, you were very emphatic about your time in the restaurants and your time working in the kitchen. Then you started to kind of talk more about the wine programs and started thinking more about like running the front of the house, to which then later you were starting to just kind of scratch the surface on the Bellus wines. And now that you're on the NCF&B podcast here now,
2017.
In 2017, shooting right before Halloween, what is the timestamp that you're going to be remembered by at this very moment when we're talking about you and your career?
Oh, goodness. Well, first of all, thanks for doing such incredible research. I think it just speaks to the thoughtfulness of your podcast. I would say where my focus is right now, and I feel like all of the pieces really certainly overlap, and that they all very much help inform the other ones.
They feed each other.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess where I would say a lot of my focus is right now, rather than just focusing on the restaurants, which is, and I think a necessary focus all of the time, at least if not in the foreground, the immediate foreground, then certainly, one level below that. But with Ramona and with Bellus, it's definitely focusing on production, and I feel like that's where a lot of the conversation is going when I'm talking with other people in our industry. Then it's really, I would say, like, even just reflecting back 10 years ago, the first conversations that really got me into wine were soil and terroir. Really specifically in regards to Burgundy. That was the first place that I was able to work harvest. It was the La Poule de Neige in 2006 that for me was the hook.
So you were slumming it when you first decided to make wine.
I mean, there are other restaurants I worked at back in like the high school. Like my very first job, which I don't think I've ever talked about on a podcast, was at a lovely place called Peaberry Coffee. I was 15.
Sounds nice.
Yeah, it was great.
I thought you were going to say Fuddruckers.
No, I was then my
Or Sticky
first,
Fingers. That would be cool.
That's Cappy's jam right there.
first restaurant job was at it was called Bandera Grill, but it was owned by Houston's.
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
There's one in Brentwood,
Yes,
Los Angeles,
yes,
and they have the best
yes.
fire roasted artichokes.
Yes, they do. And
It's awesome. In fact, my wife had tamales that were very spicy that night when she was super pregnant, and that night she gave birth.
that's
We
amazing.
said the Bandera tacos made it happen.
That's incredible.
Tacos.
And I went to Mission Chinese Food. Cheers to that, by the way.
Yeah.
I went to Mission Chinese Food. It took an extra 12 hours. It was like Mission Chinese. I got the process going, and then where was it? Minetta Tavern. I randomly had half of a hamburger, which is not normally my
The
thing.
famous Minetta burger.
Which
yeah.
was delicious, yeah. And
Basically, there's no need for induction, people. Get a spicy tamale, a burger, Mission
Mission
Chinese,
Chinese.
right before you
Yeah.
think your kind of due date's coming up,
Yeah.
and voila, you get the baby. There you go.
it's that simple.
Yeah, that's it. Actually, I had a question, and we haven't even kind of delved into your background for those that don't know. I mean, you have literally worked at a who's who beyond the Bandera Grill of places. I mean, you famously started your career actually in the kitchen of Danielle.
Which
you
that
also
itself.
worked, I think, as a hostess at WD50,
Yep.
and then it goes from there. We actually have a job in common, by the way.
We do?
Yeah, you were the bar manager at Guilt.
Oh my God,
with
yes I
Justin
was.
Bogle.
Yes, I was.
I held that job in 2008.
Shortly thereafter, it
Wow.
closed because he ran it straight into the ground.
That's
No, it was actually before Jordan, but it got a lot better
Oh,
after.
she picked up the pieces.
Yeah, they got the second Michelin
What is
star
all
when she was
this?
there.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so we know all those bartenders there.
Wow, Stefan, and can I share a hilarious story?
Stefan, the tall, skinny. Yeah.
Yes, and
Yeah,
then
please do.
Greg.
Oh, Greg is hilarious.
And
I love Greg.
So can I, since Greg, I don't think that restaurant exists anymore. So,
No.
So I will share a funny Greg story.
Okay.
Since we're not talking about last names, but Greg, because it was a union restaurant, which was the only restaurant that I'd ever worked in that was a union, and it was. I should preface this by saying by this point I had worked at 11 Madison Park and at Danielle, and there's certain cultural norms, and you learn from that, and you say this is the kind of place that I want to be part of,
Yes.
or like this cultural norm feels correct, and I want to work at a place like this. And then I would say at Guilt there were different cultural norms, which
I'll
is
just help you out by saying it was the first union job I ever worked, and it will be the last.
Yes,
So-
we share that in common
Yeah.
as well.
You say union, we're talking about Danny Meyer Restaurants?
No.
The restaurant was unionized because it was inside the New York Palace
Yeah.
Hotel.
Oh, a unionized restaurant. See,
Yeah.
I don't even know any of that.
Well, and
Yeah.
it's a different.
That's a New York thing,
It's
right?
a New York
Okay.
thing. I'm sure
I was
the New
going to say,
York
we're not
restaurant.
talking shit about Danny Meyer restaurants, are we?
No.
Hear it here first.
No, and it's not even. I guess I'm not even trying to talk shit about it. I'm just sort of like observing it now from afar.
Sure.
And we got a great Greg story.
And we have a great Greg story. So Greg had what he called the last call playlist. And it was because you would get these drunk people. And so part of my job, which you probably shared as manager, was like well, maybe I shouldn't go there on the podcast, but
No, you know what, you should, because, well, even before you tell that story, part of that Last Call playlist was actually a song in my wedding. Because he introduced me to that song. What's that Whitney Houston song with the drum beat in it? I can't even remember it now.
It's that one Whitney Houston song that has a drum beat in it?
No, where she's like saying, if there was nothing else in the world, like I would still be
the
with
Kevin
you.
Costner.
No, not
No.
always.
No.
I'll think
I
of
wanna
it.
dance with somebody.
No, it's a slow drum.
Because the point of his Last Call
Forrest,
playlist.
get on that to let us know.
What would happen is people come to the bar at a hotel, and sometimes they're staying at the hotel, and sometimes they're not, and they would drink a lot. It was, especially if they were staying at the hotel, then they're out of their home city. They would drink a lot, and then as bar manager, like I never ever was home before 3:30. Sometimes it was after 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
But Greg realized that the way that he could incentivize people to leave the bar was by turning on the Last Call
shitty
playlist.
music, yeah.
It was this is quoting him, all the songs that made him want to commit suicide, and he turned up the air conditioning. So there you are. And even if you're drunk and you're not aware of what's going on, it's like you're freezing cold listening to really sad songs.
Yeah, but Greg, who's the joke on? You're still listening to the music. You're not immune to listening to it.
But he's a
not
very
an
emotional
inspiring
guy,
fellow,
so
yeah.
he kind of liked it as well. But
I should not say it that way. Yeah, he was. I mean, it was just. I bring up that story only to illustrate the kind of culture that is not indicative of the places that I realized I really love to work in and be part of, because.
Yeah. So let's put a button on this. Anyone dining late night at a restaurant and Creed comes on the radio, you know that it's the indirect way of the management saying, "Get out of here."
If it's very
to the
cold,
temperature.
With arms wide open. Oh, here's my check, please.
Okay, so Max is the music library in my life, and I can't believe that like she's talking about. It's the song she wrote. I gotta remember this. To if we're sleeping in Grand Central Station.
I don't know. I just know that the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way.
From the Bodyguard soundtrack?
No. Damn it.
All right.
And these moments where you can't remember. But anyway, so guilt in common, and you've done, I mean, everything in the business as we've talked about, and I think where Max was talking about and to where you are today, it's really impressive, and I guess because I'm staring at this Ramona can, you make this cool because I mean. As I learned today, your face is on the logo. It's you in a Ricky's wig.
I was the cheapest person who was the most available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, you're easy on the eyes. It makes sense. It's like, look, you can use yourself. I mean, it's why I'm the cover model for everything we do on the podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. No, but seriously, there's so much of a, what do I say, a lack of a bridge of wine drinkers, right? Of the very much pushed out, inexpensive, mass-produced wines, and then a huge gap between people who are taking their time and really farming, and estate wineries are paying attention to what they're growing. And this is like one of the things that bridges the gap. And so I guess my whole thing of saying this, and now seeing as your career and where you've been, and like you have the preface of White Girl Rosé, let's say, but now we have this. Do these things bring other drinkers into the category of wine and then create a whole new avenue for those wine drinkers or those potential wine drinkers?
Thank you for saying that. I think we're so at the beginning of this journey. So we soft launched this September 2016, about a year ago.
Oh, wow.
And then it was only in New York. And then actually through Instagram, there was a buyer, a woman named Caitlin, in Wisconsin, and she reached out and she said I saw this on Instagram. I buy for 20 restaurants. This looks cool. Can you send me a sample? If I like it, I want to put it at all of my places, and I need it by this date because we're opening a taco bar. And so we sent her some samples, and then she was like, I love it. Here's my distributor's name. He's the best distributor. He will be in touch with you shortly. And then like 14 seconds later, I get an email from the distributor who's like, my name is Michael from Left Bank, and I'm interested in trying samples as well. We have a great, one of our great partners in the
you
restaurant
bet your butt
space.
she owns 20 restaurants. She buys her 20 restaurants.
Instagram.
Yeah.
It was Instagram, and so
Instagram is
that's
awesome.
it's so crazy. And so that we opened up, we were like, all right, we'll experiment with a few more markets, and then we sold out a month later. And then we've been out of product all summer long until this week. So it's back in the market now, and I would say my hope with it is that exactly like you're saying, it gives that it sort of occupies this space where maybe you're not supposed to drink. Two things, I think. And I mean, the true reason that I created it is because I felt like something like that was missing. There were so many times where like we'd be out at a restaurant that only serves beer, and ordering a glass of wine either was going to be a glass of wine that I didn't have any interest in drinking, and it also didn't even feel appropriate, like at the ball game or at like the clam bar out at the beach.
Well,
it's
let's
like,
be honest. I mean, I think we all agree this, and this is probably to the point of why you make not only this wine but the Bellus wines. Inexpensive but good, and that you don't have to have bad wine. Where I think we all agree, we all appreciate wine. We know a decent amount about wine to the point where you won't drink bad wine, so you'll just elect to have a beer or nothing at all.
In your case, I
100%.
think it's tequila.
it was, well, tequila, unless you can't get tequila. Yeah, the tequila with some limes.
Right.
Yeah,
You might be
classic move.
stuck at some, some corporate restaurant, and you're just like, all right, I'll just get whatever local beer's on tap, and you're essentially providing something for people that give a shit about wine, that spend a little time worrying about flavor and acid and
Totally,
all of that.
100%. And so, like, I think of myself, like, the very first time that I had something, like a version of wine where I was like, oh, that's delicious. Unlike, I would say, with the exclusion of the semester abroad that I spent in Italy, where I was actually able to drink high quality wine very inexpensively. It was back when like there was still lira instead of euro, and so a bottle of wine was like $4 or something.
Which is like a bag of lira.
You replaced all the lira and put the bottle of wine inside.
It was really good for us back then.
Yeah.
I came back with a new wardrobe. It was great. But aside from that, I remember the first time I had a wine cooler, and I was like, this is, it's not something that I would ever drink now, and it's actually an entire category that disappeared when Congress passed an excise tax in 1991 that quintupled, it passed a law that quintupled the excise tax on wine-based products in favor of malt. So like that's
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So that's why Bartles and James is no mas?
Went away. Yeah, apparently they're coming back, but I don't even believe it's wine-based. I believe it's malt-based now, like Zima and White Star Lemonade.
So wait, are the taxes changed now, or
No.
It's still the same way?
No, still the same.
That's
but
why
like,
Zima went away.
That's why, no, Zima went away, and Zima is malt-based.
Zima sucks. That's why it went away.
I think that might
Apparently
be the
it's
reason.
still available in Japan.
It's back, but like, let's be honest, some things just go away because they suck.
Well, and so the thing for me was like, why can't someone do that better? Like, why is it, especially with the interest and the curiosity that like I see every single day at the restaurant. So like every single person I know has a use for it. Like there's a moment where like a glass of wine isn't appropriate, but a Ramona might be if people like how
Absolutely.
it tastes. And so I just felt like it was important to make sure that I wanted to drink it and that it was easy and accessible. And like Raj Par has a Ramona sticker on his phone, and it's like makes me so happy every time I see it, because it's like Raj, I feel like Raj's palate is like it's like at the pinnacle, and the fact that he likes Ramona and is a Ramona fan.
That
For
makes me
those
laugh.
that don't know, Raj Par, of course, of Sandhi Wines, and ran Michael Mina Beverage, and a very well-renowned, regarded sommelier.
That was leading me to that same like network of somms and all that. So Ramona Fizz wine cooler. If Patrick Cappiello can put Muscadet in a 40-ounce bottle, then why can't I put mine in a can? Is that
Yeah.
kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, it was sort of like I didn't even know that Patrick was. I think like the idea. It took a while to get Ramona from an idea into an actual product.
Yeah.
Just because of like for example, the canning machine, the canning line that we worked with for the first run, which was last September, was the very first production run that canning line had ever worked with. The other option was going to be hiring a mobile canner from Arizona, paying for him and his team to truck it. So it wasn't that efficient, and then it was like, all right, there's a new guy opening on the East Coast. He's based in DC, this will make more sense. But it's such a new category, and so many things along the way just took a little bit
Yeah, I
longer.
want to take it on the food side, and I just want to put like foie gras in a can, like in a tuna can, and I'll call it like
You can-
foie am, like foie spam.
You can
Flam.
already do that at Charles de Gaulle.
Really?
You can buy
Foie
foie
gras
gras in a can.
Well, you guys have seen that movie with Ben Stiller and Jack
But
Black.
it's a great idea. You should bring it to the U.S.
where they put flan in a tube.
Oh yeah.
At the end.
Flan, flan.
So it's kind of already been done.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get onto the food side. And with you work for David Chang, and he's arguably a world-renowned celebrity with his own food show and everything. What's that like, and how has it changed your life? I mean, even before that, obviously you worked for Daniel Boulud and all these renowned chefs, but what's different about working for David?
Okay, so I would say a lot of things, and I love them. So the thing, and I would say also by the time I had a chance to work with David, I was at a different. I had had a chance to work at some other amazing places and really understand the rules and have a lot of structure in my life. So at Danielle, but then really at EMP, both as a somm and then as a manager. And Will Guidara, the general manager and owner,
Who now owns the Nomad.
And Made Nice, and yeah, they're doing amazing things. He is brilliant with structure, and so I feel like I had a whole bunch of structure and got to work in a very, very structured environment, which was incredibly useful transitioning to Momo, because Dave really gave me this mandate of like break the rules, like understand the rules and now go break them.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was so free. It was sort of like, okay, wine program, that's your show. I'm not bothering with that. Like, you know what you're doing, go do
Does
it.
David know his wines? Does he know about
He
wine?
loves white Burgundy. It's amazing. And he knows white Burgundy really well. And he actually just wrote a column in GQ about it. It was really cool to see. I love, Dave, I guess the other thing that I really learned from Dave was high-low, which is inherently Ramona. It's like, let's take organic Sicilian Zabibo grapes and we'll put them in a can. And we're going to mix it with grapefruit because it's going to taste good and we want to drink that. And so Dave has that. Dave grasped and really promoted and believed in high-low before anyone else.
Yeah.
By high-low, you mean like you can get the best of something, but also put it at a low price?
Like I'm going to bring, like Benton's ham, for example. Like I recently got to understand the story of Benton's ham. He smelled that ham cooking when he was a chef, a line cook. He might have still been in reservations, but it was when he was at Kraft.
Yeah.
And he was like, the smell of that bacon is insane. What is that bacon cooking?
Yeah.
And it was, I think it's, I need to get my facts right, but I believe it's from Virginia. And so anyway, he
Well, yeah, the guy's won like so many James Beards.
Yeah.
And he just is like a consummate professional in the baking game. Like
Yes.
there's no one doing what he does.
And yes, exactly. So when you take a product like that is now used to make the ramen, it's in the pork buns, that kind of thing, and you apply a sense of integrity to something that maybe other places at the time would have just used some pork bouillon cubes from wherever, or a much less renowned pork source.
Yeah.
And when you just apply, and then you put it in this little noodle bar in the East Village that has no backs on the stools, in a grimy little area that you've really cleaned.
That's brilliant.
The detail, that's what it is, right?
It's the detail,
that little thing.
100%. And it's sort of deciding on your North Star and then not veering from that, but not giving a shit about the other stuff. In as long as it serves the purpose of your North Star.
Happy holidays, ladies and gentlemen. It is that season, and that season is to drink wine. And where do you get that wine? Triangle Wine Company. They have everything you need. You don't need to go anywhere else. They have Burgundy, Bordeaux, Beaujolais, Barolo, California, Cabernet Sauvignon, Pinot Noir, whatever you want. You want bubbles, they have it, and they have it in multiple options and multiple price ranges. Plus, their customer service is exemplary, and they have 3 locations, so probably close to where any of you are listening right now. Go to Triangle Wine Company, and your holiday dinners will be complete. Also, join me, Matt, of the NCF&B podcast, as I will be pouring 5 delicious wines at the Cary location of the Triangle Wine Company. That's at the Cary location tonight, December 20th, at the Cary location on Waverly Place, and I'll be pouring 5 delicious wines to get your mouth watering for the holidays.
Yeah, so combining some of these things, and it actually relates back to Ramona. A couple of the ladies that work with Ramona, with you, once worked for Lucky Peach, is that right?
Yes,
And
exactly.
so-
2 of them.
And that is a defunct magazine now, from what I understand.
Yes.
Once like last year was a James Beard
Yeah,
award-winning.
and it didn't go
magazine.
away because of financial reasons.
Sure.
It went away because, and I'm not the right spokesperson for this, but basically it just stopped making sense for everyone. I think as it made sense for some people involved, but not other people involved, and as everyone grew and their priorities became firmer and maybe shifted, then maybe it wasn't the right focus for some people and it was for others, but that was not enough to make it last.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I didn't know much about it, but I know, like, I've read about what people wrote about in the magazine. It seemed like it was a pretty forward-thinking food
Totally.
magazine.
Oh God.
That was pushing the envelope.
Always push the envelope, always in the name of quality. And we're super lucky. We have 2 total dynamos from formerly the Lucky Peach team. One is Kate Newhouse.
Yeah.
She is our director of marketing and partnerships, and she is amazing. She is a force to be reckoned with. She's just super on top of everything and an amazing sounding board. So she's very much a partner in thought.
That's so cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then also Lucky Peach's former COO, Brett Warshaw, who is a powerhouse as well, and she helps us with a lot of operation stuff.
I think that, first of all, I want to mention that you might see some people on camera. We are actually at Poole's right before lineup, so this is a very live and real thing, and we love it, and thank you for helping.
Oh, Cinderella!
Don't mind us.
Please. Mopping the floors. Please don't. The one time I'm on camera, and here I am with a mop in my hands.
Seriously.
These are tight shots. You might not get up. It's all right.
So back to your story, Jordan. The fact that you see this with Ramona, Bellus Wines, working with David Chang on a corporate level, I'm curious to bring it back to North Carolina for a second. You've just been here, so I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you about, but a couple things. You're here because your wines are now being represented here, so that's a point of validation there. Secondly, what do you think David would think, or you putting your corporate beverage director hat on, about opening up in secondary markets such as Raleigh, North Carolina, or Durham?
Right. All right. So I definitely never want to speak for Dave because he very much has his own very clear opinion. So I will not try to do that. But I would say the thing that is really inspiring and exciting is that just even at lunch today, we had such a dynamic conversation, and everyone is so engaged and so curious. And the conversation, so much of our conversation was about ways in which conversations with our buyers that I got to have lunch with, the conversations they have with their guests on a regular basis, and the way that they're able to influence what people are drinking, and in this way that people are incredibly open-minded. So some of the wines that came up, a Greek sparkling orange wine.
Yeah.
And I would say even in the middle of Manhattan, even in the East Village, yes, of course, you can hand sell a few bottles of sparkling orange Greek wine, but it is by no means, a massive collective movement.
Yeah, no.
It's not mainstream or staple.
No, and so
items,
And it probably never will be. So that's it is what it is.
Totally.
Yeah.
But it's just so cool to hear that, like, things that are of interest to a small segment of people in the middle of Manhattan are also of interest to a small segment of people here in North Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that, so I'm from Los Angeles,
You are,
and
okay.
Matt being from New York, I think we both, in moving down here at separate times, living out here, we're really impressed. No, people know what they're talking about. There's so much education in this town. I mean, what most people call the geeky stuff and the weird stuff. The edgier stuff is what sells.
Do you think that that type of thinking is going? You're a candidate also for a Master Sommelier, and you have just theory to pass, right?
Well, no. Now I reset actually. So I have passed. I passed
We'll
theory.
pour a little out for your reset.
I passed theory and tasting. I guess I passed tasting in 13 or 14. 13 I passed tasting. 14 I passed nothing. 15 I passed theory, and then
service.
I have service, but I reset. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you have to do it all over.
I have to do it all over again.
What did
Max
Max cast? He's passed them all.
He's passed them all, but not in the
Yeah.
time
But he
frame.
reset.
Yep.
He was on the show. So,
Yes, okay.
do you think, like, obviously, in order to be a Master Sommelier in your training, that you have to do the classics, and it's really built on classics? Do you think that this movement towards esoteric wines and appreciating out there stuff will ever infiltrate, or like, what will be the next thing that will become mainstream to be on an exam?
It's so
like that?
interesting. I mean, I think the exam is a really interesting thing, and I have a ton of respect for it. For me, like one thing that came up in our lunch today was like the journey and the importance of the journey. And I feel like that was what I wanted out of that program, was the journey and the chance to basically have a structure and a community that I respected and loved being part of, in which to learn. I think like there are certain champagnes that are promoted in exams that are maybe not the champagnes that I actually spend my own money on or would want to drink. I think there are really good, I think it's an amazing chance to study things that maybe I wouldn't gravitate towards, there are a whole bunch of New Zealand winery questions that pop up, and sometimes they're obscure and they're not imported to the US and all of that. So it's like, it's good to know, like, all right, good, I'm going to spend more time than I would normally spend learning about New Zealand wineries, because that's probably going to be a question on the exam. But I would also say part of my journey, now that I've been able to take the exam a few different times and see the way in which the exams change, and I would also say some years it's different than other years, and that's how exams go. I love the chance to be part of a community. It depends on what one's goal is. If you want to learn a really good overview of the classics and the big names, you should really entrench yourself in that study culture, because that's 100% what the focus is. Of course, there are some more obscure focal points that come up, but I think something like I'll just take Jeff Kellogg, because I get to be here because of Kellogg Selections and the program that he built at Maialino. I think he passed his advanced with the highest score and then decided not to pursue the master's exam, and instead he focused on building a program at Maialino with this incredible focus on Barolo and Old Barolo and Champagne, with producer and just go really deep into that. And so I think that kind of thinking, that eschews going for an MS diploma, then allows people studying for the MS exam to have the opportunity to actually taste bottles that will help them pass. And I've seen that kind of thing, like I'm 100% plugging my husband's restaurants here, but Charlie Bird and Pasquale Jones are incredible wine cultures, and neither Grant nor Robert have decided to pursue their MS. I think Robert was never really interested in that program, but Grant passed his advanced. I think he was the youngest person to pass his advanced, and then decided not to focus on that, and instead they have these incredible programs where so many times people go. So I think it's all part of a very symbiotic community and relationship where there is space for one to pursue one's interests and one's passions.
But if you're going to go on the MS route, in a long summation of what you're saying is, it's probably not going to be, if you want to study the esoterics or the MS is probably not the best route for you.
I think that's fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what's your choice then? I mean, obviously it seems like your choice is you want to be an MS, you've been doing it, so what's the goal?
Yeah, that's such a good question. All right, so for me, for a long time, the personal goal was the MS. I would say up through 2015, and then I took the MS that year. That's when I did not, I passed, I had already passed tasting, passed theory that year, and then I was told that I did not pass service because of one table. It was the champagne table, and and
So ironic.
I know, but it was
Gets
so
you every
funny
time.
too because I really studied. I did so much prep work, lots of mock exams, and that was like before I had received feedback where I was like, okay, you're almost there. You just didn't really have the answers. But once you get that, then you're set. And so I really focused on like knowing the answers. And when the time came, I was so happy that I knew the answers. And I was like, I think I passed. Like, maybe I did. That's so crazy. Wow, that's weird. Like, I didn't feel that heart-sinking, gut-wrenching feeling of like, oh, I really blew, whatever it was. And then, fast forward a few hours later to the feedback time, and they were like, our table at the champagne table really felt like you just didn't seem like yourself. And that was a tough pill to swallow because none of them had ever seen me work in a restaurant. It was actually the third year in a row that we'd been nominated for a James Beard semifinalist award. And
For service?
For service, and I was on the floor at Co every single night because we just opened
No,
it.
you're wrong. look at the accolades. I should already pass just for that.
It was it was like an interesting moment where it was like, oh, okay, like everyone's going to have their own different opinion, and I know that I worked as hard as I could to prepare for that. And then the feedback that I got was not any feedback that I could really like use to become better at my job. Wow. And so I thought that was like, and fast forward to 5 days after that, I was in Italy for a wedding and then to do some Bellus stuff, and I found out I was pregnant. And so, so the next opportunity...
Sort of puts a damper on all the wine tasting.
Yeah.
Well, hold on, though.
Oops, sorry.
Let's fix the mic. So, I just want to be clear because, like, you've said some powerful stuff here, and not to put you on the spot, but I want to ask you a personal question. So, like, you said in the beginning that it was your focus in 2015, but if I'm understanding what you're saying right, it's like after that, in your mind, you had kind of passed it and done everything that you have challenged yourself to do to pass it, and then just because the official validation wasn't there, it kind of changed your focus on it?
I would say for me it was an amazing journey.
Yeah.
Especially that year, because that was a year where I thought to myself, everything is in place for me to do this if I really put in the work.
And you felt like you put in the work.
I knew that I did as much as I could at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know this. We all do the same thing. We all stay up till 3 a.m. studying. We all, get up early and like go for a run and listen to the voice notes that we created the day before, like all of those things. And I would say I was really proud of passing the theory because that was the part that I was the most nervous about. And so, and before that, I would say I totally did a shoddy job. I failed tasting my first time taking it at the advanced and got to taste with Jay Fletcher, who's an incredible taster and a brilliant sommelier mentor and just a remarkable human being.
Jay Fletcher?
He is based in Aspen. He's like the reason, so like a lot of people like Carlton McCoy and Dustin Wilson and Richard Betts, there's a whole contingent of people who will credit Jay with helping them taste. And I think that for me was so valuable because I failed because I was bad at tasting, even though I was like, I'm great at tasting. No, you were bad at tasting. You failed tasting. Okay, great. I'm going to work at tasting. And then that's what I did. And I did everything I could. And then I passed it on my first try at the master's exam because I received feedback that was like amazing feedback for my career. And it was the kind of thing where it's like, all right, I'm going to practice this and I'm going to do it and I'm going to create a process and I'm going to like focus solely on that and I'm going to get to this point. And I don't want to say, I think what I've heard is that like since the feedback that I received, I've heard that their feedback policy has changed, which I think is great. I don't know because I have not taken the service exam since 2015. But I think for me, I felt like that was a really valuable journey, like getting through passing theory, being part of the court, studying with those groups, and it just felt really important and valuable, and I loved that I was able to do that while opening Co because it was very much let's work with, like we were doing at the time, a rinse pairing where we would rinse a glass with Ganavat Vangeon and then pour Ganavat Cremant into it because it was the best pairing with this uni dish. And it's like Vangeon is this incredibly aromatically, it's so fun.
Vangeon yellow wine from the Jura.
Yeah, and if you ever need a ringer pairing, it is a molecularly extremely complex.
What was it paired with?
We paired it with a few different variations of that, but the way that we found that was because for a little while, like when I first joined Momo, Dave was like, blah blah blah, and we were chatting, and he was like, I always really like sparkling wines, and I was like, me too. It's so good and it's super versatile. And he's like, I always had this dream of a sparkling pairing at Co, and I was like, I would so love to build that and to drink. Like I would like to drink that at Co if I were a diner. And there are so many varieties of sparkling wines or sparkling beverages. So we started with a sparkling cocktail. There were so many pieces along the way, and at one point the chefs created this incredible soup, and it was a shishito pepper soup with brioche and orange gelée, and it was incredibly hard to pair with, and like everything
Soups to pair with are always
and like the pepper flavor was so clear. So of course the obvious thought is like Gruner Veltliner, oh that's green, that'll be good and herbaceous. And then there was something from, I think it was Salinas, where it was like sort of a sparkling wine that was like a little bit green and herbaceous, and we tried them and they just like muddled all the flavors. And I had been reading a book at the time it was the former sommelier at El Bulli who wrote a book on like ripping apart the molecular structure of foods and wines and pairing things together for that reason. And there was a page on Oloroso sherry, and it was like, this will go well with everything because it's so complex. And so I don't know, I felt like Oloroso sherry was going to be a little bit too intense and too high alcohol, but if we could do something similar, and we had Van Jonen in-house, so rinsed the glass with Van Jonen because it was a sparkling pairing. We're like, well, we better pour something sparkling into it. And so we poured some Cremant, and it worked so well with the soup.
It's so cool to use a rinse
yeah.
to then put your wine in a vessel that's been rinsed with a different wine. I like that whole idea.
But it makes so much sense because Van Jonen has such a distinct flavor and quality that it will definitely resonate in the glass. Yeah.
Totally, and that goes back to the Dave's mandate of breaking the rules. Yeah.
Well, before we're done, I would love to spend a little bit of time speaking about Bellus, the Bellus wines.
Yeah, of course, amazing. All right, so we make 3 wines in Italy and 1 in California. I'll speak to and we at one point made 1 wine in Burgundy with Alix de Montille, and stopped making that because I didn't feel like it was adding value to anyone's life. Like if somebody wanted a wine from Alix de Montille, they could just buy it.
Right, but how cool was it for you to make wine in Poole de Montille?
It was amazing. It was amazing. Of course it was. And I remember like Jean-Marc Rouleau plugged it when he did Levy's podcast. He was like, well, and the Bellus wine, Rochefort, which was very cool. But I didn't feel like at the end of the day, was I contributing to the conversation? I didn't feel like I was adding anything in a meaningful way through a wine because the grapes that we were able to work with were not better than the grapes. They were always grapes that somebody had decided to sell. And in Burgundy, every Burgundian knows the value of their land. And I think that is a different value proposition. In Italy, the whole thing came about because friends of mine who are not in the industry, when I was working on the floor at 11 Madison Park, wanted to know if the Ravenot that they had just tried was something that they could buy easily, and like, was it, $19? And I'd be like, no, and no.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, but that too, though, I would have to think that anything you're purchasing from Poole de Montille and Meursault are still going to be very expensive. So in turn, it was probably your most expensive Bellus wine?
It was,
so again, it probably didn't even fit the bill of what you're trying to do with
100%. And that's why it was like a fun project, but it was like, this does not fit into our mission statement at the end of the day. So in Italy, we are able to partner with different growers in different regions. So Campania for our Caldera Falangina. In Vittoria, Sicily for our Scopello Frappato, and then in Tuscany for our Girasole Sangiovese Chianti.
So it was funny, Matt and I, we do this thing, we're called the NCF&B.
Okay.
But we also do the NCF at bar, and it's really just like a support bar that we'll do for functions, charity, pop-ups, things like that, just to kind of help out, and we'll throw down some cocktails and do whatever. And we were pleasantly surprised that when we walked in to the Jamie Kirk Hahn Foundation, which is a local charity or a local organization foundation, was having their gala to which we were bartending. We were pleasantly surprised to see behind the bar Bellus wines And it all centered back to, of course, it's Jeff Kellogg's portfolio, but it goes back to Aini Rubistello.
I love
we saw
Inez
this morning,
so much. Inez is amazing.
Inez is amazing. Of course, she's a callback to New York, Manhattan as well, but now lives out here. But she put all that together, and Matt looks there. He's like, I know those wines. And so we were sitting there, and we were making cocktails, and then, of course, sipping a little bit of some Bellus while we could.
That's so amazing.
Yeah.
No, that was cool.
Oh my goodness.
To see them there and see that application.
Well, thank you so much.
So, on top of that, with the Bellus wines, it's very fitting that they were at a charity because you give a significant amount of your profits to various charities for each one.
We do, exactly. So the Caldera to Earth Justice, which calls themselves the Earth's Lawyer and is just fighting on behalf of the Earth. Scopello, we donate to Noma Gaia, which is an NGO run by my sister, which pushes multinational corporations to respect human rights. And then Girasole to the Tory Burch Foundation, which empowers women entrepreneurs domestically through mentorship and microfinance. And it's cool because we get to have a say in the way that the grapes are grown, and they're always grown organically with no chemicals or pesticides. And then because sort of I'm the only one accountable, like it feels. I don't pay myself a salary. Nobody gets a salary from Bellus, and so it's nice to be able to, in addition to that, for example, we sponsored a Syrian refugee child because we can, we're able to do that with Bellus. So it's, feel fortunate in that way.
I think Bellus wines will have to be served at Mike Lee's Empire, non-for-profit Empire restaurants that we talked about
I love his vision for that. I love his vision.
He's talked about it on the show, and we've talked about it.
He is amazing, and his vision is so impressive and inspiring.
Yeah. I want to talk about women entrepreneurs, but women working and women being pregnant, because you had an article that was written about you, which was in Vogue.
It was in Vogue.
Despite like all the cool things you've done in your life, I can't imagine. I mean, I gotta imagine like when Vogue calls, that's got to be a cool feeling. It was
a cool article.
Yeah, you have to tell us a story at some point. But how did your taste buds change being pregnant, and then after being pregnant? I know you've said that like tasting during pregnant was a great experience because your senses were heightened. But now, do you find that your palate has changed?
It's funny. So yes and yes. Yeah. It was a great experience because, and along with that, I had this complete disinterest in drinking wine while pregnant. And I was sort of sad because it's not like a switch goes off and you're like, oh, all of a sudden I no longer find this delicious, whereas I normally would.
That does sound sad. You didn't like wine.
I know. I was just sort of like, what? And we as we do in our industry, these, sips of Latoche would float by, and I would be like, I felt like such a jerk. I know. I felt like a jerk. But I think it was, for me, and I'm sure every woman is different, so I don't want to speak on behalf of all women, but
Well, I think any woman who's been pregnant or knows somebody who's pregnant can identify with the fact that for some reason you lose your taste for certain things, whether it be wine or a cheeseburger.
Or go hardcore to something that you normally don't.
Like fried food. And I am not normally, I ate basically French fries for entire meals on multiple occasions.
I do that too, but I'm not
the first trimester.
I mean, it's just...
But back to now, because I bring this because my wife now, I find it so hard to bring wines home for her.
Is she pregnant?
No, so we have a 15-month-old.
Oh my goodness.
But like her taste, she used to just like dry, crisp, scaly wines, and now all she wants is like sweet, sparkling. Like I'm excited for your bougie de Cerdon, California.
Can you bring her some Ramona, please?
And so, she will
give her
love
a 4-pack from me.
Yeah,
okay,
I will for sure. But
she wasn't even digging on what we were drinking last night.
We were drinking some Marnays, and we drank some La Spinetta Nebbiolo from 2012, which was delicious.
No, give her some Ramona.
Yeah, so I got to give her some Ramona. But have any of those things
great question. That's a really good question. I have not found that
they've gone back.
They have gone back, but it was very weird because I would notice that I was not enjoying things that I knew I would normally have been enjoying, and that lasted through breastfeeding as well.
Okay.
I would say, and then after that, then a lot of things returned to normal.
Gotcha.
But it took many months, and it was gradual. So it was like, I one day found myself just completely disinterested in drinking things that normally I would be interested in drinking. But and that lasted through through pregnancy, through breastfeeding, and then now I feel like it's returned to normal.
I mean, on a separate note, but keeping with your pregnancy and then a family, I mean, I'm just like adding up all these things. You have a winery, you have a husband, a kid, you're running beverage programs at Momofuku, and you're in Vogue magazine, and now you're in North Carolina. How do you make all, and your backdrop of where you live is New York City, arguably the center of the universe. How do you make time for your life?
Oh goodness. All right. Well, I would say now, like having teams is so key. So like at Momo, I do much less of the day to day now, and it's great, and that makes my life possible for sure.
Are you still on the floor?
I am, but not as much at all. So it's the kind of thing where I mean, I think if being on the floor is like a 90-hour-a-week commitment,
Absolutely.
and so I feel super fortunate that I'm able to still be part of Momo without needing to be on the floor every night. And certainly I miss that sometimes, but I also love, I would say more than missing, it's more like I love that piece of it when I have the chance to do that, but I also love what I'm doing now, and as Ramona grows, it's sort of taking on a life of its own, and back to your question earlier about like prioritizing things, I think the MS was something that and maybe I will take it again, but it's something that I feel like was really, really, really important for me in 2015, and then I sort of secretly took it in 2016. I was like, oh, what happens if I just give it a shot? Like, I passed this part once already. I'll just, like block off 3 weeks before the exam, and I'll
crash.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens. And I came close, but no cigar, and so it was like, okay, cool. Like for me, that was. And I don't want to say a sense of closure because maybe I'll take it some other point, but it doesn't feel like you can't do everything all the time, and priorities definitely shift.
Well, I'm going to answer Max's question for you because I read the Food and Wine article also about like your diary of what you drink and do over a week, and the green juice is probably, and like copious amounts of tea.
I love tea.
Yeah.
Well, also tea. I think like where we were staying that one weekend, there was no, like the coffee was not great, so yeah.
By the way, that's kind of insane that week. Like, is that real? I mean, I know.
That week was my birthday week, so I drank.
Like helicopter up to the Hamptons, like.
This is what we do normally,
One night, your husband, Robert, who I know is a noted wine collector and has it all, but like just opening up Rumier, I mean.
Well, so we're lucky to get to drink Rumier.
Yeah.
Sort of. I mean, luckily. Christophe was part of first of all, Rumier is a winemaker that my husband has loved and admired since he started learning about wine many years ago. And then Christophe was at the Poole de Neige in 2006 when that was like the transition moment between working in the kitchen at Daniel, and then it was actually Danielle who said, like, you seem like you really care about this wine thing. You should like get out of the kitchen, like work in a vineyard. Here's how we'll do it. We'll just talk to these guys. We'll talk to them tomorrow, and that's literally how it happened.
Awesome.
But I remember my goal at Danielle. It was good advice that I had received, and it was, whatever you do, just do a great job to the point that Daniel Boulud is going to write you a great letter of recommendation when you leave. And that was my sole goal, because I knew I didn't want to work in the kitchen forever, but I knew I wanted to do a great job so that if something came to it, that Daniel would be open to writing a letter of recommendation.
And once you have that letter of recommendation, it's like, where can't you go in the world?
Totally. And I give that advice to anyone who asks, like, what should I do as I approach this? And it's like, figure out who makes the opinions, like work your ass off and make sure that the person whose opinion you want is going to write you a great letter at the end of the day.
We've talked about your past, and we've talked about you've worked 6 harvests, 5?
In Burgundy, 6 in Burgundy.
6 in Burgundy, 1 in Argentina, which I wanted to hear about that as well. But one of your jobs along the way was Nick and Tony's on the Hamptons. And for people that don't know, that is like hallowed ground for sommeliers, because you're out in the Hamptons for the summer, and a who's who of who celebrity comes by. So I know you met everybody in the wine business, but what's like, I've been there and I've seen Gwyneth Paltrow, I've seen Howard Stern, I've seen everybody.
Oh, totally.
What's your best, like,
oh my gosh,
2 of your best celebrity moments of serving them wine?
Oh my goodness. Well, can I share one that was not a Nick and Tony's?
Sure.
Kate Blanchett came into 11 Madison Park with her husband, and they only stayed for champagne because then they had to go because because her husband wasn't feeling well. But yeah, she's just such a class act, so that was very exciting.
So we're going to wrap it up here. We're at Poole's Diner, obviously, here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Why are you here tonight? What's going on?
I get to guest somm here tonight. I'm so honored to be here and so impressed with what Ashley Christensen has built here in Raleigh. It's
Does that mean that Cappy gets to boss you around?
Oh, Cappy definitely gets to boss me around. Where's Cappy?
Please.
Is that
That's
the
Cappy
hand waving? Hi, Cappy.
It's all dark.
I am part of the Cappy show tonight, so I'm very excited.
Yeah, we better not make you late.
That's fantastic. We're just wrapping right now. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, Jordan, for having you in here, coming out from New York, coming out to the beautiful Poole's Diner out here. Matt?
Yeah, thanks for being here. It's been an inspiration just getting to know you and doing research on you, so thank you for that.
Well, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, continue to eat and drink merrily.
Thanks for listening to the NCF&B podcast. And if you've stuck with us this long, review us on iTunes and remember, 5 stars are encouraged.